There we go. I think we're live. Okay. Sorry about that. My audio was showing me some technical difficulties with the channel I was trying to give you my voice with, so you probably couldn't hear me a few minutes ago. But we're live, and the technical difficulties are out of the way. So welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel again. This is the obviously more informal version of the Eagle Ray channel. The regular video comes out on Wednesday. On Sunday, I just like to wing it and jump on camera and see what happens. So we're going to talk about electric marine news. We're going to watch the latest Eagle Ray video. We're going to talk about the giveaway details, and then I'm going to see if there are any questions in the chat at the end. So let's jump into it for real this time. We're doing a full restart here. All right, so we've got battery news. Some batteries are made out of salt, apparently. It's been a thing for more than a decade. I've heard of this in research labs for a long, long time. But it's been yet another one of those pie in the sky, not sure when it's going to be available technologies. And apparently it's at the point where it's proven to work, but not work quite well enough to compete with lithium. And some people beg to differ on that. Some of the latest research labs are able to get it powerful enough to compete with lithium. But when you make a battery out of salt, the most important factor is not necessarily can it be as powerful as lithium. The biggest question is, can it be powerful enough to do some of the same jobs that lithium does? Even if it's not quite as powerful, it's actually quite a bit less expensive than lithium to manufacture, and so it could be a promising thing to do in the future. But let's take a quick look at where we are with that, because a lot of people like to write articles about how we're there already, and I'm not really convinced. So for example, Heine Battery is a startup in China, and they are apparently the first battery maker to put sodium-ion batteries in EVs in China. Why do we care about this in the marine industry? Well, if I can buy a sodium battery and put it in a boat, I want to try it. I want to see what happens. I want to see how well it performs compared to the other batteries that I'm using. So the big question in my mind is, are we there yet? And it looks like probably not quite, but let's take a look, because in China, this startup named Heine apparently got a subsidy to build some kind of manufacturing facility. But I would bet if you were able to walk into their plant, you'd find that it's a pretty tiny operation. Because with untested technology like this, you can't just throw billions of dollars at it to build a big factory. You have to take it in baby steps. For example, when Tesla was young and they were building the Roadster, I believe they had the first prototype in 2005, and they didn't actually bring the first customer model off the line until 2009. So with that frame of reference, you can kind of see where they are with this, because they do have big partnerships. They're subsidized by the government, like a lot of EV companies in China. They're in a partnership with a big EV brand that is making thousands of cars in China already, called JAC. And they're also partnered with Volkswagen to see if these sodium batteries have legs, essentially. And so they've built a test vehicle, and that's what it looks like there. Let me see if it's over here. That's what it looks like. It's a little bit smart car-ish, but they're basically trying to solve the economy electric problem in China right now. A thing that nobody in the States seems to be capable of. Tesla is, I think, aiming to get there one day, but they're still kind of targeted at the luxury market right now. They originally planned for the Model 3 to be the closer to economy car, I guess, but the base price is $35,000. Most people buy the $50,000 version, and so it's just priced out. If you don't work in tech or you're not a lawyer, you're not going to afford a Tesla yet. But hopefully the competition will be changing that soon, because it's not going to happen in the States within the next year or so, but a lot of these Chinese EV companies are already selling internationally. So they're exporting to Europe, they're exporting to Australia. There are trade issues with the US that kind of prevent them from showing up here. and it's hard to say whether that will remain the case in the future. But it'll be unfortunate if they never show up here, because I like the idea of having lower cost options, even if they're cheaper and less quality components. When Honda and Toyota showed up in the States in, I don't remember if it was the late 70s or early 80s, everybody kind of hated it because there was a big kind of political battle with whether we should support support Japan economically back then, because Japan was an up and coming power back then. More so, it's us versus China these days. That's the political talk you always hear, and so I think a lot of people would be turned off by the idea of buying a Chinese EV. But it's important to know that in Australia and in Europe, they're already buying them, and so they're paying $15,000 for a brand new car in other parts of the world, and that makes me a little bit jealous, honestly. But anyways, back to sodium batteries, because this prototype is just a prototype. I think they made one or two of these, and so this is not full-on manufacturing yet. They're hopefully going to tool up to actually build sodium batteries in bulk one of these days, but it doesn't look like they're there yet. I think with these articles, they want to make it seem like they're there. Like there's been a lot of rumors in the media because of this startup and because of this product, or this prototype that they've produced, being able to perform to a certain level. A lot of people are speculating, well, now they're going to put thousands of these batteries in all of the EV brands that are coming out of China, and I'm very skeptical about that. For example, one of the biggest rumors lately has been with the biggest Chinese EV maker in their country, called BYD, which is basically the Chinese Tesla. They're actually, vehicle sales wise, they are neck and neck with Tesla right now. But they're building more than twice as many vehicles this year as they were same time last year, and they're projected to be twice as big as Tesla by the end of the year. That's how fast they're growing. They don't just make electric vehicles. This is one of those big electronics conglomerates in China. It's kind of like Yamaha or Suzuki. They make things for multiple industries, but they got into the EV industry many years ago. They actually make electric buses in the States right now. I've been on one of their electric buses. If you go to LA and you take the Orange Line on the metro, you're riding in a BYD bus. And in general, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of their cars imported for the consumer market, but at least not in the near future because of trade regulations and issues. But this new BYD model that's coming out in a couple of weeks, called the Seagull, which is a ridiculous name for a car, but it looks pretty cool. It's kind of Scion-esque, and it costs $11,600. Guys, I'm really jealous of that. Like, can we please get some new cars that are that cheap? Like, I understand if they're cheap economy components inside, if the dashboard's made of plastic or whatever it has to be in order to sell something this cheap, but we need competition like this in the car market in the States. Otherwise, people aren't going to be able to afford cars anymore. And the fact that this thing's coming out with a 55 kilowatt range for the base model is pretty crazy. That's almost as big as the base model Tesla Model 3. So it'll do like a little over 200 miles on a charge. And the important thing that I want to highlight, though, because I'm going on and on about cars, even though this is a boat channel, the important thing I want to highlight is the battery technology, because obviously BYD, I believe, has done exclusively LFP batteries. We've talked about these before. These are the same chemistry that we use in all our boats. And the reason we use them in boats mostly right now is because they're so popular in EVs in China. Because literally every battery factory in China is producing millions of these LFP batteries, because the Chinese government kind of deemed it the safe lithium several years ago, and mandated that all car makers have to use this brand of lithium, and they have to go through intense regulation in order to be approved to put this type of lithium in a car. So they have tight controls over that, and probably for the best, because it makes them very safe. These are the safest type of lithium batteries in the world, largely because of that. And in fact, big battery manufacturers like Cattle make millions of these, but they have to restrict about 20-ish% of their supply and they're not allowed to legally put them in cars because they don't perform quite highly enough. And those get sold at auction and they get shipped across to the States. And I'm holding one in my hands right now. Most of the batteries you use on a boat are knockoff EV batteries that didn't quite perform highly enough. They still perform great for what we need. If you're powering just a little trolling motor compared to a car, you don't need the highest performer of the batch. But these are knockoff batteries, and I'm totally fine with that. But the new car that BYD is coming out with is obviously going to be an LFP car, same chemistry they've been using for years. But there's been, ever since this Heine announcement of this sodium prototype came out, there's been so much speculation about whether or not this BYD car, this new Seagull, would actually have a version available as a sodium battery. And because the dream of sodium technology is that it's going to be cheaper than equivalent lithium to manufacture. And the thing is, I am convinced that's true someday, because you look at the processes to refine lithium versus the processes to refine sodium, and it just makes sense. It's going to be more cost effective one day to make a sodium battery. So it'll be the cheapest option in the market eventually. The problem with that is you have supply constraints when you have early technology. So this Heine manufacturing facility that they used to build this prototype probably can't make thousands of batteries per month. And that's a big problem because Cattle's making millions of LFP batteries per month. So there's no way they can compete in a meaningful way this year or next year, or probably in the next 5 years. So what we usually see with this stuff is there's a big hype cycle, and then the media forgets about it and moves on to the next shiny thing, and then 5 years later you see some real moves in the market. And the last thing I want to point out to highlight the fact that sodium batteries are not a thing yet, even though it's pretty cool that they actually work, is whether or not we can buy one. Like what I really care about is if I can get online and click the buy button on any website where I can purchase a sodium battery and have it show up at my house, that's when I really start caring about it. And so if you look at AliExpress, for example, and you just jump in and you type in sodium ion battery, look at the results here. Every single thing, LiFePO4, 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 LiFePO, it's all LiFePOs down the line. There's nothing but lithium available to purchase from China right now, and it's all lithium iron phosphate, because there are other lithium chemistries available, titanate and NMC and a few others, but those quantities available are dwindling. Even for NMC, which historically was by far the most popular, it's dwindling because China has deemed LFP as the safe lithium, and that's the one that the EV industry uses. Therefore, everything else is kind of being forced to follow suit by the availabilities in the supply chain. So that's the biggest part of why I believe most of our EVs in the States in the next few years are going to transition to LFP style batteries, even though they don't perform quite as well. Speaking of performance, before we wrap up on batteries, we talked a little bit last time about how these are 210-ish watt-hours per kilogram, which is obviously plenty these days to run an electric vehicle. I mean, you see this new Seagull EV that BYD is launching is running on these, and they're able to get a 200-ish mile range out of them without any trouble. So even though they're a little bit heavier than previous lithium batteries, they're much safer, much less likely to catch fire, and so it's a great trade-off. How do sodium batteries stack up in that sense? Well, let's take a look. I believe sodium batteries, the best that Cattle could do as of last year was 160 watt-hours per kilogram, which is somewhere in the realm of 75% of the safe lithium batteries. So if you build a battery of the same size and weight-ish out of sodium, it's going to be 3/4 as power dense as the current best safe lithium battery. And that will probably improve, because sodium is a big focus in R&D labs at places like Cattle, where they really care about what's the new chemistry of 10 years from now. They're the ones working hardest on that because they know it's going to affect their bottom line intensely. But the idea that you would pay less for a salt battery eventually in order to get a performance out of your car that's something like 3/4 of lithium, it feels like they'll probably need to get that on par with LFP. They need to improve the performance of sodium by a little bit before those really come out and start competing well with the current lineup of LFP batteries. So we're probably a few years away from that. We'll see how it goes. But I am excited to get on AliExpress one day and type in sodium ion battery and actually see some options show up that I can have come here in the studio so that I can make a salt battery and actually use it on my boat. Well, as soon as that's available, you will see that happen on the Eagle Ray channel. So speaking of the Eagle Ray channel, I'm gonna double check the chat here because I never know when somebody's gonna show up, and it looks like nobody's here yet because it's early days. The Eagle Ray channel started a little bit more than a month ago. I've released 7 videos so far. I'm doing weekly videos. But if you want to come and hang out with me on Sundays, it's going to be probably just us because there's not many people in the chat yet, and I'm totally okay with that. Any questions you have about batteries or boat motors, electric propulsion, anything you want to ask, I'm happy to help you out. Let's take a quick look at the video that just came out on Wednesday because I want this channel mostly to be about electric propulsion on the water. So I'll do boat build projects sometimes. I'll do battery and motor comparisons. I'm going to do some solar panel projects on boats. But every once in a while, I need to get my hands dirty learning fabrication because I'm not going to be able to complete a lot of these projects unless I learn some fabrication basics. And I like to watch a lot of fabrication stuff on YouTube. I'm definitely no expert at all whatsoever when it comes to fabrication, but that's what this week's video was about. I had to learn how to TIG weld in order to build the first boat project. And so I caught it all on camera, and I want to show you guys exactly what I went through because welding anything is pretty daunting. It's kind of scary when you have that many amps that close to your bare skin. It gets the adrenaline pumping for sure. And that's part of it that I didn't really anticipate. I thought, I'll give it a try, see what happens. As soon as you fire up that torch for the first time, it's like, whoa, this is way more dangerous than I was expecting, and it makes you feel like maybe I should consult professionals before I try this. But you just do a little bit of it and you get familiar, and it's become second nature pretty quickly, just like everything else. So let's take a look at what I went through during that process, because the first video of a 2-part series on how I learned how to weld just came out this past Wednesday. Next one's coming out this coming Wednesday. And so let's do a quick watch through of the first one here.
Purdue University Global. Apply now at purdueglobal.edu.
New Vibrant from Airwick, our most amazing true to nature fragrance experience ever.
Look at that. That is horrible. If only I had a welder, I could fix that myself. I've said that to myself so many times. This time, I broke down and bought one. Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel, where we do all things DIY electric boats. Electric motors, batteries, solar panels, you name it. If it's got volts and it's on a boat, you're in the right place. Today we're going to fix my boat trailer. I bought this old pontoon trailer from a guy out in Yuma, Arizona, and he told me it was probably safe to drive it a couple 100 miles, which is how far I needed to go to get home. But he did say he was planning to replace this trailer. I believe his exact words were, "It's past its prime." And now I know why. Once I got this trailer out from under my boat, I was able to knock the rust off and paint it black, but as I was working on it, I noticed...
It took a million years to knock that rust off, by the way. I used the Milwaukee angle grinder that we're giving away. We'll talk about that.
Welded several parts of this himself. The gauge of steel he used on this cross member is obviously not up to the task of holding a 22-foot pontoon, and that's why you're getting a rip here. You can see this is 2 by 3. I don't think it's stainless because it was just covered in rust all the way through. You can see down here, I haven't painted that part yet. That's what the entire trailer looked like there. And this rip here, it runs along the entire length of this cross member. It goes down the side, but I'm gonna try and bring you up from underneath so you can, it's probably too dark, but. So this thing is about to come apart. I do not want to put my boat back on this. So long story short, I need to replace this.
Seeing that, can you believe that I drove 200 miles from Yuma all the way back to Lake Havasu on windy roads, through hills and stuff, with that running behind me? When I pulled the boat off, when I pulled the trailer out from under the boat and saw that, I was like, whoa, that could have come apart at any moment. If it had just completely broken loose, the right side of my boat would have done one of these, and it probably would have rolled off of the road. So I was really happy I discovered that before I actually tried to take my boat to the water for the first time.
Corrosion. So here's the plan. The busted 3x2 cross member that's on my trailer, it gave way because the brackets are aft of it, not underneath. And so they kind of acted as a lever to twist the tube out of place and cause it to rip on one side. So I'm gonna fix that by making a wider cross member. It's the same thickness as the old tube, but I'm gonna cut 3 of these to the length of the old cross member, and then I'm gonna weld them side by side. So there's gonna be 3 in a row here. So instead of 1.5 inches, it's gonna be 4.5 inches. It's gonna be a super cross member. And that will cover the entire top of all of the brackets that exist in that section for both bolting to the frame and bolting to the axle. If you've been in my shoes, you've probably watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos just like I did about how to weld. And after every video, more and more, I started to feel like, oh my God, I am never gonna be able to do this. But as you acquire a little bit of knowledge, your confidence starts to grow. And so I've now watched hundreds of welding videos. And so naturally, I'm an expert welder already. I have a feeling I might burn my house down, but I have learned a few things. There are 3 types of
I did not burn my house down.
welding, MIG welding, and TIG welding. With my incredibly high level of expertise, I believe stick welding is meant for these kind of brute force, throw it together and hope for the best jobs. It's kind of like the McDonald's of welding. Whereas MIG welding is more like In-N-Out Burger. It's simple, straightforward, it gives high quality results relative to its simplicity. It's apparently pretty easy to learn, and it can get you off to the races laying down professional welds with just a little bit of practice. But
if anyone's wondering, I am aware that B-roll that I just showed for MIG welding, half of it is not actually a MIG welder. I realized that after I cut this video, and I apologize for that, but I didn't have time to change it out.
like a steak at a 4-star restaurant. It's the highest quality, highest learning curve form of welding there is. And as I said, I'm an expert on the subject already, so of course I'm jumping headfirst into hard mode. But before I can weld my first fancy new part, I've got a lot of setup to do and a lot of new gear to purchase. If you have nice stone floors in your garage, my thought was you'll want to protect them against the slag that you always see flying off a welding arc in the movies. Little did I know that with TIG welding, there actually isn't any flying slag at all as long as you're operating the machine correctly. But
almost no flying slag. If you don't operate the torch correctly, you can have metal flying in any direction, and I am going to show a little proof of that later.
Argon gas, a rack to put it all on, a welding table, which is ridiculously heavy for its size, by the way. Oh, and last but not least, I didn't want to blind my neighbors as they walk by when my garage door is open, so I bought some welding screens to isolate my brand new welding station. Total cost? Yikes. Okay, we're getting close to turning our first piece of metal into...
That welding table, I haven't weighed how heavy it is, but it is just barely light enough for me to lift by myself if I have leverage. You could see, if you watch that section back, I had to set the table on a box in order to get my hands under it, but also in order for it to be high enough for me to have leverage to get it up off of the ground. There was no way to get it, even if it had been up like a couple of inches off the ground, it was levered enough so that its weight was too much for me to lift. I had to turn it sideways, put a box down, put it on top of the box, and then I was able to lift it. So it was like that close to being too heavy for me to lift.
Arc from oxygen, because plasma doesn't breathe the same stuff we do. This copper part in front is the cullet body. It's supposed to be removable, but mine is stuck tight. I think they do that to idiot-proof this thing for beginners, because the cullet body is supposed to be the first thing you tighten down and everything else follows after that. But before we put it all together, our tungsten tips need to get themselves into shape. Apparently, you need to sharpen this to a very fine point. I saw somebody doing it on YouTube, which is always a good way to go. Seems stable enough. What seems less stable is this bad boy. Yeah, wish me luck.
I have so much footage that I didn't really have room to use in either the first part or the second part. And some of it included like what I went through with grinding these tungsten tips, because there's in a pack you get like a dozen of them, and as a beginner you're going to go through all dozen of them. You're not going to use the entire tungsten, because you can, if you grind over and over and over again, you're going to run it to too short to use anymore after a while. I haven't done that with any of my tungsten tips yet, but you get them dirty so easily, and you have to go and regrind them if you want to make good welds. And so what you want to do is grind all of them, have them ready to swap out so that you don't have to be grinding while you're welding. And I didn't realize how many I was going to need, but in a single session as a beginner, I would get every single one of them dirty, and then I'd have to grind and then come back.
Make sure that the surface we're going to be going on top of is nice and clean as well. Side. I'm just going to scuff this entire thing. Okay, so now it's time to weld. Don't forget to ground your work.
Another thing I wasn't able to cover in detail here was I went through 2.5 canisters of argon. I got the 80 cubic foot size. It's kind of like a middle range size, and definitely wasn't enough. I upgraded to 120, and I used that entire thing, and then I had to refill it before I was competent at welding enough to get through just this job. So I wasted a whole bunch of argon gas learning how to do this.
Moms make the best napkins.
Can't even turn off ads on my own videos.
Zip, don't get scared.
That is not a faulty helmet, by the way. I just hadn't adjusted the tension correctly yet. I was a complete noob.
There's not enough electricity to even punch through that oxide. See, the piece didn't melt at all. There was no pool formed because the oxide is strong enough that it's not even letting the electricity get through. And it still hasn't quite broken through it. Yeah, this is just not working.
One of the early things you learn in order to not be terrible at welding is how to fix that standoff height. I see this and it's like, oh, stop it. It's too high.
Oops. Maybe I was just too far away. I finally finally got a pool. Not the best looking pool, but it's a pool. Got a little bit of a crater at the end. There's obviously some oxide that got in the way. It's a little bit like milky and cloudy right here and right here. I'm still getting a feel for how fast I need to back off the pedal in order to not lose the integrity of the arc. Every time I start a new project, I have this weird belief that it's gonna go great the first time, and it never does. It's like this beginner's luck delusion I'm able to put myself in, and it kind of needs to be that way because otherwise I might not really ever get going with a new project. So in the case of welding, I actually thought that I might become this master welder in less than 24 hours. And in retrospect, that's a completely ridiculous notion. So it took about 2 weeks for me to become competent enough to fix my trailer. Got a lot of footage of it. We don't have time to get to all of it today, but I want to show you guys a sneak peek of what's coming next week. These are all just a darn mess. I got a hole in my pants right there. Here we go. Yeah, that was nothing. Oh yeah, that is not coming apart at all. Oh. This little spot right in here looks alright, and everything else is just a mess. Like and subscribe. When that hole in my pants happened, by the way, here, let me turn this down. When that hole in my pants happened, I finished the weld, and then I felt a little bit of warmth in that spot, and I looked down, and there was a hole. There was no like metal dried up there. It must have been the tiniest little piece of slag that put a hole straight through my pants. Luckily, if it had been any larger, I would have had a burn there. Yeah, you can definitely take some damage doing this stuff. But luckily, like I picked TIG welding, which is pretty difficult to learn as welding goes. At least that's what I hear. I've never tried MIG or stick. Somebody mentioned flux core to me. I don't even really know what that is. I got to look it up. Obviously, I'm a complete beginner with this stuff, but it's with TIG welding. As far as learning curve, it's difficult compared to the others, but as far as the mess that you make, there's practically no mess compared to the other styles, at least from what I've seen. When I watch beginners on YouTube doing aluminum welding with MIG, it just looks like a complete mess. And my experience with TIG has been, my welds are a mess, just not quite that much a mess. They don't look quite like the bird poop that I see from beginners when they're using MIG. And I was hoping to stay away from that from the beginning. And I think I'm doing okay. Like these days, my welds are not very consistent. Like the thickness will expand and contract as I go because I don't have the best control over the line that I'm drawing yet. But I am at the point now where I can fairly consistently get the penetration of the pool into the metal so that the welds are nice and strong, which is the hardest part. And you could see just a little piece of that for what's coming in next week's video, where I figure out how to actually, instead of just putting filler on top of the metal, I figure out how to get the heat down into the metal. And you actually have to go way too far with that in order to be able to back off and do it correctly. So you'll see me figuring that out next week. There's a lot of good stuff coming. But like I said, fabrication is fun. I'm a complete beginner at it. So if you've never done welding or any of this other fabrication stuff we've got coming on the channel, there's going to be a little bit more of that. I want to keep it like 80% batteries and motors for boats and boat build projects, and then 20%-ish fabrication, just because this is not going to be a fabrication channel, but there's a lot of fabrication techniques that I need to learn in order to do the other stuff. So there's going to be a little bit of that. So speaking of fabrication, the first giveaway for the channel is the Milwaukee angle grinder. I did use this to knock all of the rust off of my trailer. I bought some rust discs to attach to this, and I think I went through 4 or 5 of them. It took like maybe 6 hours total to grind every inch of paint for the most part off of that trailer. The only spot that I missed was that spot that I showed you at the beginning of the video,
But I did knock all of the rust off of that trailer before I painted it, and angle grinder works great for that. Cordless is even better, so you don't have to be dragging the cord around the trailer. So if you know how to use an angle grinder already, that's cool. But if you don't have a cordless one, stick around in the live stream because I'm growing the channel as fast as I can. On YouTube, when you start out, the first 100 subscribers are the hardest to get because YouTube can't afford to take chances on brand new channels a lot of the time because there's just thousands of them, and most of them don't have the best content because people making new channels haven't quite figured out how to make great content yet. I feel like I'm getting there. I'm learning how to make the kind of content that the algorithm likes. Like last week's video, for example. Let's take a quick look because last week's video did better than anything else on my channel so far. Not amazing performance yet because it's very early days, but you can see I had a few hundred views on the early videos, and then last week's video, the second before the one we just watched, has more than 10 times as many views because it's the first video of mine that the algorithm has actually noticed. You can actually go into analytics and you can see which videos are being shown on the YouTube homepage versus shown in the channel strip on other people's channels. And this is the video that came out last week is the very first of my videos that's actually getting shown to anybody that I'm not proactively advertising to. So these other videos that I did in the boat build series, those views have mostly come from me sharing on Facebook and a little bit on Reddit and stuff. But for the first time, YouTube is over here. YouTube is starting to pay attention to me. And so based on the growth that I'm seeing at the speed I'm seeing from that video, if I have a few more like that, it seems to me it's going to be something like 4 months or so before we have 1,000 subscribers. And the reason I bring it up is because the angle grinder giveaway is going to happen the moment we hit 1,000 subscribers. So it's probably going to be in the summertime around there where I give this away. The way it works is as soon as the channel hits 1,000 subscribers, the very next live stream, I'm going to give this away to somebody in the live stream. So stick around, you might win it. I'll do more giveaways in the future if you don't want an angle grinder. There's going to be lots of stuff. I'm going to give away batteries and motors, all kinds of interesting stuff for DIY boat projects. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat to see if there's any questions I can answer. Like I said, it's very early days, so it looks like no questions yet, but you're welcome to join me next Sunday if you're watching this after the fact. A lot of people who do watch these live streams so far watch them after the fact because the channel is very young. But if you're one of those people, come on out for the one that's coming up this Sunday. It's 2 p.m. Pacific time. I look forward to chatting with you, answering any questions you have. Or just, let's hang out and have a conversation. I'm going to be here every Sunday, weekly videos, nonstop. If I miss a Sunday, I will try and let you guys know in the community section of the channel beforehand. But if I haven't said anything to the contrary, expect me to be here at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. But before I wrap up, I want you to know that I moved to Lake Havasu less than a year ago to try and change my quality of life because I always wanted to be near the water. I couldn't make it happen in LA because everything is just so expensive and I was so busy working in a cubicle all day. I could never get out to the beach. And so I left Los Angeles to come out here to Arizona so that I could be near a body of water and build myself a lifestyle where I have a chance to get out there multiple times per week. And now I've done that and it's amazing. And so I want you to know you don't have to change your entire lifestyle in order to get a taste of that. Go buy a boat on Facebook Marketplace. Get out to the water at least once a year. It's so much fun. It's so good for your peace of mind. It will recharge and refresh you every time you do it, guaranteed. So I hope everybody has a chance to experience that. And with that, I'm going to let you go. Hope to see you same time next week. And have a good one. Take care and boat safe.